Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so I know the last couple of weeks has been difficult. I mean, it's been psychologically difficult. Every time I wake up in the morning and I go to RCP, I go to realclearpolitics.com, I'm forced to look at this.
Where are you going?
Vincent, we can't live side by side.
Vincent!
Our temperaments are incompatible. You must admit.
It's not exactly a pretty sight to behold. It's not something that makes me feel all giddy in the morning, but it's also not something that caused panic for me. I know a lot of people have had some quite emotional reactions over the last couple of weeks, as the polls seemed they were slipping, but I was sticking to my guns that people were going to wake up, and I was sticking to my guns that the Democrats would of course misplay, and eventually Kamala Harris's little honeymoon period would come to an end. And well, folks, it seems that might actually be happening here. A lot of people are calling it response bias. Rather than an actual, authentic, sustainable rise in the polls for Kamala, it's already starting to fall apart. Kamala Harris's polling advantage is unraveling before their very eyes. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. Let's add the extra needed context that this photo desperately needs. It's not all as bad as it seems on the surface. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so the polls keep dropping. Some of the polls have been pretty bad, but I have to say I've noticed a significant shift. None of them seem disastrous. All the polls this week seem to be bringing the race back within 1 or 2 points. And that right there is very important because that signals a trend. You know, even the most wild polls that were showing Kamala Harris winning by massive margins, even those polls are coming back to reality. So obviously, the trend right now is moving away from Kamala and straight to Donald Trump. And in some of these polls, I mean, the results are just shocking. Here's Scott Rasmussen on X, and by the way, very important that we say this, Scott Rasmussen does not represent Rasmussen polls. These are two different Rasmussens, two different pollsters. He's with RMG Research that generally polls in a margin of error around 1.9%. So in other words, they're a great pollster, and they just released a brand new poll, which has Democrats, I'm just gonna say it, frickin' bricks. We got Trump at 46% and Kamala Harris at 45%. Trump's in the lead by +1. That's not the craziest headline in isolation, but of course, usually the story lies below the headline. Actually, you know what? We'll just let Scott Rasmussen present the story himself. He writes on Twitter, national poll, Trump 46, Harris 45. When we push for leaners, Trump has a 2-point edge at 49 to 47%, and a week ago, the candidates were tied at 49% among likely voters. So last week it was a tie, this week Trump's up by 2, and here's where it gets crazy. 2 weeks ago, so right in the middle of Kamala hysteria, Kamala Harris led in this particular poll by 5 points with registered voters. The race for the White House remains too close to call. Anybody who says they know who will win is either lying to you or deluding themselves. It's already shifting, folks. You know, on some of these polling aggregator websites, they're even doing things like removing Michigan from the Battleground list. With Kamala Harris, Michigan is now likely Democrat, if not safe Democrat. I've unironically seen people suggest that, but the latest poll from AARP shows Trump still maintaining a +2 lead in the state. Last week, the story was that Kamala Harris was going to sweep Michigan by 11 points. Unironically, that's what was being said. A couple polls were bouncing around showing Kamala Harris with astronomical leads in the state, and Democrats simply accepted it as fact. But as of right now, Pennsylvania and Michigan are too close to call. They're both polling within the margin of error, and while Democrats will tell you they're confident with that situation, the fact of the matter is, that's not a bullish scenario for Democrats. You know, in 2016 and in 2020, that would be considered a nightmare scenario for Democrats. Donald Trump's expected to overperform his polling numbers. That's always been the baseline. Well, if he's statistically tied or up 2 points, well, that's a pretty bad outlook for Democrats. It's basically that simple. Democrats are acting all confident here, but the numbers simply aren't enough. And of course, the numbers keep getting worse for them. Actually, you know, here's a great example to make that exact point. The latest Emerson poll has completely shifted. Previously, Kamala Harris was getting trounced, and now all of a sudden she's winning +4. I think it's like a 7 to 10 point shift. I can't remember exactly, but anyways, a dramatic shift in the Emerson poll, and Democrats, of course, are celebrating the poll. This is fantastic news. Kamala Harris is up +4. And again, look, when you read the headline, when you just look at the poll, on the surface you see Harris +4, it's demoralizing. But then when you actually delve into the data of the poll, you see that that same exact Emerson poll actually shows Trump leading in Pennsylvania by 2 points, with 51% support. I don't know if I need to say this, I feel like it goes without saying, but if Donald Trump loses the Electoral College by 4 points to Kamala Harris, but wins Pennsylvania, and then wins Arizona and Georgia, he wins. So even in this honeymoon Kamala poll, Trump technically is polling towards victory. And you know, that's what they don't want to tell you. You know, they're trying to come to a conclusion, but the reality is, the situation is simply too volatile. We're getting polls showing varying different results. We're seeing some polls showing Kamala Harris leading with young voters by over 30 points, and then we're seeing the Scott Rasmussen RMG Research poll showing Trump leading with young voters aged 18 18 to 34, and we've seen multiple of these polls showing completely conflicting results. Everything's all over the place. It's impossible to actually predict what's going on, but one thing is absolutely certain, and that's that Trump remains competitive. In fact, he might even still be holding an edge here, and that clearly over the last couple of weeks, Trump has been on a meteoric rise, and Kamala Harris, well, it's just kind of fizzling out. You know, a lot of people have been having that conversation, even in the corporate lamestream media. Everybody's been asking, well, what's plan B? What's the next step? Sure, everything looks great now, but is Kamala Harris going to be able to weather the blows? That's been the question that everybody's been asking. Will she be able to pull it off? Well, Kamala Harris has never actually won a competitive race. She has never come out on top in a competitive election. So I don't know. She's always been susceptible to attacks. I mean, sure, she's had an illustrious political career in San Francisco where everybody's a Democrat, and if you're not a Democrat, your neighbor's probably going to be calling the FBI on you or something. I don't know. But you know, sure, she's won elections there. Just like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will most likely continue to get reelected until she's an aged fossil like Nancy Pelosi in her district. You know, sure, Kamala can win in San Francisco, but can she win in a heated, competitive general election where you stand on important economic issues actually matters to people? You know, not being a socialist would be a great start.
Just to follow up on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, to reiterate, you support the Medicare for All bill, I think initially co-sponsored by Senator Bernie Sanders. You're also a co-sponsor on it. I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance. So for people out there who like their insurance, they don't get to keep it?
Well, listen, the idea is that everyone gets access to medical care. And you don't have to go through the process of going through an insurance company, having them give you approval, going through the paperwork, all of the delay that may require. Who of us has not had that situation where you got to wait for approval and the doctor says, well, I don't know if your insurance company is going to cover this? Let's eliminate all of that. Let's move on.
Where your track record, of course, gets exposed for everybody to see. Can Kamala Harris withstand that scrutiny? I mean, history tells us no. She couldn't even handle the lightest of scrutiny during the presidential debates back during the 2020 primary. Can she handle the heat? I'm just not sure. I'm sticking with my same perspective from 6 months ago. If you asked me 6 months ago if Kamala Harris could compete with Donald Trump, I would tell you absolutely not. Joe Biden should resign right now, in fact, to present Kamala Harris. She's obviously the weak link, and I'm going to stick with that. I just don't think she has what it takes to continue this artificial momentum that's been built up here. Look, maybe I'm wrong, and she obviously is going to have a moment here at the debate to really sell herself as a candidate. I mean, let's see what happens. But as of now, clearly everything is going quite downhill. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.